Well, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to our first virtual town hall 2025 from the Charities and Legal Services Division about matters affecting charitable solicitation registration. So those that have joined before know that we'll do several of these a year about various topics related to charitable solicitation registration and what we regulate regarding charitable organizations. This first town hall is just going to cover the registration requirements for charities. Yeah, not a lot's changed in the last year, but we find it's a good topic to always cover, as folks always have questions about it. So with that in mind, just a few ground rules today. This town hall is being recorded. By joining the town hall, you've consented to the recorder being on the recording, as it's explained in the email. The recording will get posted online on the main charity page of the Secretary of State's website. It's usually posted within a week or so of the town hall occurring. So sometime this week it should get uploaded. So if I was going around and you missed some information on the slide and you want to see that again, you'll be able to see that recording and go back and grab anything you need within a few days from now. If you have any questions, feel free to throw them in the chat box there. We'll take a look and go through them at the end. If anybody does ask questions and somebody else thinks it's the answer, please refrain from answering it anyway. It's not really a thing that happens on these town halls, but some of the other ones we do on different matters, folks will well-intentioned try to give an answer, but maybe give the wrong information. So throw some questions in that chat if you have them, and let us answer those at the end. And otherwise, we're going to go through this, and at the very end, if there's no question in the chat box, we usually open the floor to anybody that has a question that they've been sitting on that they want to talk about related to this town hall. Feel free to shout it out at that time. Wait till the town hall is done and and I open it up for questions. So I think that covers it all. Oh yeah, nope, it doesn't. And the recording and PowerPoint presentation today are for information purposes only. This is not intended to be legal advice. Informational purposes only, not intended to be legal advice. So with all that in mind, let's get going here. So again, I'm Michael Schlein. I'm the Charities Legal Services Division. And what we're going to talk about today is mostly covered in the Maryland Solicitations Act, which in the law you can find in the Annotated Code of Maryland Business Regulation Article, Title 6, and the Code of Maryland Regulations, Title 01, Subtitle 02, Chapter 04, which are the charity regulations. If you wanted to buy a Solicitations Act book, you can get it online. I know that says /notary pages /SOS order form, but you can get your charity book from there too if you would like one. It's not something you have to get, but if you want to get it, to have something you can hold in your hands and read from there. So the biggest question to answer first and foremost is, does my organization have to register? So when does an organization have to register with the Secretary of State's office? And it's really three things that would cause it to register. If it wants to solicit charitable contributions in Maryland, if it has charitable contributions solicited on its behalf in Maryland, or if it's soliciting contributions outside of Maryland, the organization's located in Maryland. So if you're located in Maryland and soliciting anywhere, whether it's here or elsewhere, you need to register. And if you're located outside of Maryland but soliciting in Maryland, you need to register. And somebody soliciting on your behalf in Maryland, you need to register. Down there at the bottom in fancy bold italics, an important note here. We get asked a lot about online solicitations. If you're located in Maryland and you have a donate button on your website where you're asking for donations on social media, that is considered soliciting charitable contributions in Maryland. So again, remember, if you're located in Maryland, if you're in the state and soliciting anywhere, you'd have to register. So anywhere, including cyberspace, would require registration upon soliciting. So just covering the basics there, a little more housekeeping. What's a charitable contribution? So one that it's made on a representation that'll be used for a charitable purpose. So that sounds pretty straightforward. What's a charitable purpose? Charitable, philanthropic, educational, eleemosynary, patriotic, and so on. So if an organization soliciting contributions with the representation that it's going to benefit something charitable, that's a charitable contribution. It includes several things, not just cash, but any payment, transfer, or forcible pledge of financial help, including those things: money, credit, property, services. Charitable contribution does not include, and this is maybe sometimes when you read through definitions in the law, it's important to know what they mean, but it's also important to know what they don't include or what they don't mean in a particular section of law. So when we're talking about contributions and registration requirements under the Maryland Solicitations Act, an unsolicited gift does not count as a contribution. Government money, government grants, they don't count either. So we're not counting government money. We'll talk about registration requirements for different sizes of organizations here a little later on. But if you've ever read one of our initial registration statement instructions from the old paper forms, where it tells you how to calculate your charitable contributions, you would notice that it doesn't, if you have a full 990, it tells you not to include government grant money. We add up certain lines on page 9 of a full 990. The government money line is not one we add up because it doesn't count as a contribution for the purposes of registration under the Solicitations Act. Membership assessments, dues. Think any type of membership assessment. I'm a member of an organization. I get a bona fide right or privilege from the organization, and I pay a membership fees to be a member. Registration fees. Organizations, sometimes you see them there as well. So similar concept, right? If you're filling out your 990, those things tend to go on a particular line of your 990. Membership dues, assessments, registration fees. That money's getting reported on a line. We don't count either. Payments for property sold or services rendered, it's not a contribution. And something that the law calls a public safety contribution, which essentially is a contribution for think a firefighting company, volunteer fire company, police organization, stuff like that, as it's defined in our law. So it is a contribution, but also maybe just as important, I think, what is not included in contributions under our law. So what is a charitable solicitation? This is the one that I think trips up most folks. When you think charitable solicitation, you're not really thinking all this stuff. You go, well, okay, I get a letter in the mail, somebody calls me, somebody emails me, or I see something on social media asking for me to contribute. Those are the things that people think about when they think of charitable solicitation. I'll take my time on this page a second just to let all those words sink in. I won't read the entire page. But any oral or written request for a contribution is a solicitation, regardless of whether the person who makes the request receives the contribution. I ask, that's a solicitation, whether you give or not to my charitable cause. If I've asked, I have solicited. So it's the act of asking, it's the act of the solicitation that drives registration, not whether or not you receive the contribution. How much you receive in contributions will drive what type of filing you have to make with us. But the fact that you asked for a charitable contribution, that you conducted a charitable solicitation, is what requires the organization to have to file with us. The part I am going to emphasize here is down at the last subpoint with all the smaller subpoints within that. We all know what a donation is and stuff like that. But one of the things that the Maryland Solicitations Act defines as a charitable solicitation includes the sale of stuff, not just the ask for donation. So the sale of or attempt to sell admission, advertising space, book card, chance, think raffle ticket, coupon, device, magazine, membership, subscription, tag, ticket, or tangible item in connection with which any of these following three things happen. An appeal is made for contributions. The name of the charitable organization is used expressly or implicitly to induce a purchase, or a statement is made that some or all the proceeds from the sale will be used for a charitable purpose. So if the organization's name is being used in an attempt to sell any of those things, that counts as a solicitation, and the revenue from that fundraising activity counts towards total contributions for the purpose of registration with us under the Maryland Solicitations Act. Those fundraising events, we're in Maryland, think, crab feast, bull roast, thinking of all the different things that I see that different nonprofits have to raise money, but various fundraising events. Maybe I bought a ticket to attend, so I didn't necessarily donate, but I'm coming to your fundraising event. I attended, I bought the ticket, the admission, whether it's to the fundraising event or raffle or whatever it is that's being sold. I bought it because of the connection to the charitable organization, right? If I wanted to go, eat barbecue or pit beef or something like that, I might go get it from the store or buy it from a restaurant or something, but I came to your fundraising event because it supports your organization. So that is that's the thing to think about. That is what is included in charitable solicitation. So all that stuff, and if you're paying, talked earlier about lines that we use on a full 990 or even a 990 EZ, we use the lines from your charitable fundraising events and from charitable gaming. The gross revenue from those charitable fundraising events and charitable gaming, page 9, lines 8A and 9A, are getting counted towards your charitable contributions for the purposes of what you file under the Maryland Solicitations Act. Moving on. Before we get into the what do you file with us, just a few housekeeping points. We had an online system go live back in August of 22. Far more folks file online than don't. If you've already submitted a paper application, don't do another one online. We will process it. Communications, though, are coming from the online system. We don't send letters in the mail anymore for just basic run-of-the-mill renewal reminders. They're coming by email to the email address of record from the organization's registration. So one of the things, talk about different pitfalls, but one of the pitfalls we encounter from the paper filing world is folks love to not give us an email address or a physical address or a mailing address or a phone number. Not all of them, I'm saying, but it seems like a lot of folks pick one of those things to not provide us, and they're all required to register, and the email address is required because that's how all those communications come out now. You're getting several notices by email at the email address of record before the organization has to file its annual registrations. So making sure that you're giving us an email that we're actually going to use and check, or that somebody's going to check on your behalf. If the charitable organization's already registered, don't submit a new application online. There's a way to do annual registrations. One of the ideas that has kind of been talked about that we're going to look at trying to do this year is a town hall that just walks people through the online system and filling out an app, so you can kind of see what it looks like as things get answered and changed and moves around, just so people can get an idea or the online form. Not because we're going to tell you what to answer, but just to give kind of a demo of the online system, more so than what you get out of our user guides. If the organization owes part of an annual registration from a prior year, we may ask for it to be set outside the system, but we're going to tell you that. Especially, we don't see it as much anymore, but especially back in 22 and 23 when we were transitioning from paper to online, mostly online. Some folks that were missing parts of filings from before we went online, we were still asking them to send us stuff, by paper, by mail, or by email to complete those prior filings that are all past due at this point. So we might do that, but we'll tell you. But if you're just filing a regular annual registration, the online system, generally speaking, is the way to go. It's instant, it's in there. You can see it's in a review status, and you get notified as soon as it's approved, and it tends to get a faster review simply because it's easier to review them. Also helps with quality of filing, which I'll touch on here as well. Accessing One Stop. So it's an online filing system. onestop.md.gov, onestop.md.gov. And like any filing system online, it has its quirks and its things. And so folks, you figure out how to use it, obviously. Then there's some user guides that help you do that. That link down there on the fourth bullet point is the link to the main charity page on the Secretary of State's website. If you remember anything else, remember SOS, like Secretary of State.maryland.gov, sos.maryland.gov. That's the direct link to the charity page. But even if you just make it to the main Secretary of State's website, sos.maryland.gov, you can click towards the top of the screen. You'll see the word charities. You can click on it and get you to the charity main page, where all these town hall recordings are posted as well, but where the user guides are posted. They have step-by-steps, and they have pictures that go with those instructions. Set up the account, or navigate the system, or generate and complete an annual registration or annual filing form in the system. Few thoughts about it. One of the things that's beneficial on the online system is you can grant access to multiple individuals. In the paper world, we'd have one email address and one mail something and hope somebody received it, picked it up, and answered it. But if you have an online filing system and you can delegate authority to other users, any of those users can access the system. So maybe if one forgets, somebody else remembers. Or I like to think positively, or will good things to happen if somebody's on here and wins the lottery jackpot. You go retire tomorrow. Whoever there is still with the organization can pick up right where you left off and make those filings. So the forms are also built to ask for exactly what is required. How does it do that? Up front, the first few questions that are asked are trying to determine what your filing requirements are. So the initial 4 questions on the form, depending on how you answer the first question, is getting at what does this organization owe, and as long as you answer those questions correctly and plug in the right numbers from your 990 or 990 EZ if you have one, the form is going to walk you right down the correct path. It's not going to ask for any more or any less than what you have to give us part of your annual registration. So it's designed to kind of grow as you go. As you answer certain things yes, it might ask for some additional info because you answered yes, but follow the flow of the form and it should get you there. Religious organizations that don't have to file annual registrations, you don't need to go in annually and submit an annual filing and ask for exemption every year. For religious organizations, still send us your 990 annually. Person getting some background noise. Still send your 990 annually to us, and you can send it to us via email. The email address is the DL Charity, back in slide here, DL Charity _SOS@maryland.gov, DL Charity _SOS@maryland.gov, and you can email it to us that way. Name changes, you're still going to send us your name change documentation offline. We don't unlock that power for charities, for users. Always get some curious name changes back in the day, and we require certain documentation if an organization is going to change its name, so we still do that outside of the system, and we go in and change the name if that's occurred. Mentioning we may ask for some paper forms if you have partially completed stuff from prior years. If you're submitting annual registrations for multiple years online and you owe a late fee, only pay the late fee once, don't double pay the late fee. The late fee is based on the due date at the top of your form. So when you generate an annual filing form in the online system, up at the top of the form, it has a due date. And if it seems outdated, that means we think something is missing from a prior year. That's there really to grab attention. A lot of folks just kind of look right on by that or think it's some arbitrary thing. If you generate a renewal form in our online system and it says you were last current on 11/15 of 22, we think you're pretty far behind in your annual registration. So you may want to stop, reach out to us, and ask us what you need to submit if you don't know what you need to submit already. So reach out and ask. We'd rather you ask than you guess. We'd rather you ask than guess and overpay or double pay or, so if you see a old renewal date in there, okay, is you just owe one filing that's a little past due, or is it a couple years old? And in which case we probably think you owe multiple things. So if you're not sure, you reach out to us. One other thing, and maybe I need to add it here, it's less of a tip and more of just whatever you've told us is the email address or record, that's how you need to log into the system. The users that are authorized by the system are based on what you guys tell us. So if we were given a, say I was the record holder, an example, michael.schlein@maryland.gov. If that's the email address or record, I can't log into One Stop with info@maryland.gov. I need to log in as michael.schlein@maryland.gov because that's what the system recognizes as a valid user on a login. So one of the things we run into is folks kind of forget what email address they use sometimes, and they'll log into One Stop when they won't see their stuff, and that's because One Stop doesn't know who you are unless you're logged in with the email address that we've told it is the record holder and the main user. And then from there, if you're logged in, that's where you can file annual registrations or delegate other users to have access as well to the organization's records and online filing ability. So making sure you're logging in with the right email address, surprise is the right word anymore, but it happens more than I would have thought it would. But life, right? Life. People file a lot of stuff online. Everybody doesn't always remember all their usernames for everything. So it happens. But especially if you've known that you filed online before and all of a sudden you can't find any of your stuff, reach out to us. Don't guess and test, just reach out. Can't find it, what happened? And it's usually one of two or three things that is causing the problem. So things to think about navigating online. So, and one, while I'm talking about online, one important point, I think I just saw it pop up in the chat, but worth noting regardless is this is different than what you file with assessments and taxation. Totally different. For different purposes, right? You incorporate with assessments and taxation. You form your business entity there in Maryland. With us, it's just charitable solicitation registration. Assessments and taxation is using the Business Express system, Secretary of State's on One Stop. Different systems for different agencies for different purposes. So keep that in mind. Initial registration requirements and process. So there's certain things you have to give us when you want to complete an initial registration to solicit in Maryland. And then we'll talk about annual registrations after this, and it'll look very familiar because it's basically updating what you originally gave us. When you file every year, you're updating your registration. So the initial registration statement, the CR 92, articles of incorporation or bylaws, IRS tax determination letter, tax exempt status, signed copies of the IRS form 990, 990 EZ. If the organization doesn't file a 990 or 990 EZ, and I can even throw a 990 PF in there, if you're not filing one of them, we're going to make you give us something called a COF 85, which is a shorter version financial report. for folks that don't file a 990 at all or file a 990N with the IRS. And so we're not collecting that 990. You're going to give us that other COF 85 in place of that. You know, the 990N's, that little e-postcard, doesn't have a whole lot of information on there that we can use for the purposes of the annual registration requirements. The list of names and addresses of the board of directors as well. One thing that is good to think about when you're giving us the names and addresses of the board of directors, you don't have to give us alternative addresses anymore. You don't have to give us somebody's home or business address. If that person's on the board of directors and they can be reached through the organization's address, then the organization's address is what you can use for their address when you're giving us the board of directors. The online form has a little button, you know, asking if it's, you know, the person's address is the same as the organization's, and if they can be contacted there, you could check yes to that and not have to type out everyone's addresses when you enter the board of directors information. The online form, the online registration form, is built to ask for all of these things. So it's going to have you fill out all the information. It's going to have a spot for you to attach articles or bylaws or other governing instrument. It's going to ask for your IRS tax determination letter. If you fill out a 990 or 990EZ, it's going to ask you to attach that. If you don't have one of those, or you file a 990N, it's going to give you the fields to fill out to complete the COF 85. It's going to have a spot for you to enter your board of directors list. Number one thing that people mess up on the online form is they don't add their full board to the online form. We want you to plug in every current board of directors member, every current officer, director, trustee, key employee of the organization should go onto the online form. And on the online form, as you just click add another, add them, add everybody. The good thing about the online system is once you've done it once, it's going to be there next year. All you have to do is add and subtract names moving forward from that point. So these are the things that you're going to give us for every registration, initial registration. Things you may be required to give us. So more threshold-based items, financial review or an audit. So if you're an organization that has $300,000 and up to but less than $750,000, a financial review performed by an independent certified public accountant is required as part of the organization's registration. If the organization receives $750,000 or more in charitable contributions, an audit performed by an independent certified public accountant is required as part of your initial registration. Folks will sometimes ask, or out-of-state organizations ask us this. The question makes sense, don't get me wrong, but was it only contributions from Marylanders or total contributions, not just from those in Maryland? It's 300,000 to 750 total review, 750 or more audit. And so total contributions, what appears on that 990 or 990EZ, copies of all contracts with professional solicitors, fundraising councils. If applicable, you may not even have one. So if not, you'd be checking no on the form. If the organization's affiliated with a state agency, there's a question about that on the form where you check yes or no. And if it's over $750,000 in contributions and affiliated with a state agency, that's to do something called an agreed upon procedures report. Not a lot of organizations have to give us that agreed upon procedures report. There's not a lot of organizations that meet the definition of being affiliated with a state agency. And essentially what that means is that the charitable organization was created to help further the mission or role or purpose of a state agency, and it solicits charitable contributions. So if your charity wasn't formed to further the mission of a particular state agency, it's not affiliated with a state agency. And simply getting a grant from a state agency does not count as being affiliated either. So more often than not, the answer to that question is no, but every now and then the answer is yes. And the other thing that is threshold based is the registration fee. So if the organization receives $25,000 or more in charitable contributions, it's going to pay a registration fee, and that fee could range anywhere from $50 to $300. Charitable organizations that collect less than $25,000 generally aren't paying a fee unless they use the services of a professional solicitor, in which case they owe a $50 fee. So those are the initial registration requirements, and we're talking about organizations. You have to register and give us the full set of documentation if you're $25,000 or more in charitable contributions. We're going to talk about what if you're under 25 here in a few. So the annual registration requirements, we talked about initial registration. Well, once you file your initial registration, you have to file annually. You're not one and done. You file with us every year. The filing is due 10.5 months after the end of the organization's fiscal year. That's when it's due. And does that mean you have to wait for that? No, of course not. You don't have to wait for it. If your stuff is done early and you want to file early, you can file early. You don't have to wait till 10.5 months. It is not something that is necessary. I've had some organizations that aren't due until November 15th. They've already filed. So, if you want to file early, great. File early. Don't wait till the deadline, right? If you don't have to. But if you need to wait till the deadline, that's fine. That's what it's there for. So if you're required to file annually, so you're soliciting charitable contributions and you're not somehow exempt from the filing requirements, you're going to do it in an annual registration form, 990 or 990 EZ, or a COF 85 if you don't file the 990 or 990 EZ, board of directors list. Right? All that looks pretty familiar, right? Current copy of the organization articles or bylaws if they were changed. So the same things you file initially, you're going to update annually. So you're going to give us an annual form that updates all your contact information and you kind of restate all those answers from your initial registration and change the answers to those that are different. Your newest 990 or 990 EZ or COF 85, updating your board list, your current board of directors list. When folks file an annual registration, a lot of times they'll just send us the 990 and we're left to guess whether or not the current board of directors is the same that appears on the prior year's 990. It may or may not be. So we want your current board of directors list with your annual registration, not last year's board, right? If we want last year's board, we could just look at your 990 or 990 EZ. We're looking for your current board of directors when you file an annual registration. We want to know who's there now in case we need to contact who is there now. Again, due within 10.5 months of the organization's fiscal year end. So if your fiscal year ends December 31st, if you're a calendar fiscal year organization, your registration is due to us by November 15th. If you have until June 30th, your filing is due to us by May 15th. So 10.5 months after your fiscal year ends is when your filing is due. It's not based on when you first registered. It is based on when your next fiscal year end completes or ends, and then when that is due. So always based on fiscal year end. A similar slide here, annual registration requirements continued, pretty much identical to the initial registrations, things you may have to give us. All the threshold-based things or the maybe yes or no things. Financial review, 300,000 to under 750. Audit, 750,000 or greater in charitable contributions. And again, what are we talking about? 300,000 to 750,000. We're not talking about total revenue. We're talking about gross income from charitable contributions. So donations, fundraising events, revenue, stuff like that. The lines on the 990 that we're asking for are the ones that are considered contributions or money received from a charitable solicitation. So the donation lines, the fundraising revenue, events revenue line, the charitable gaming events revenue line. But we're not counting government grants, right? Because that's not a contribution under the Act. We don't count unsolicited gifts. That's not a contribution under the Act. A good example of an unsolicited gift, maybe a bequest, right? Somebody passed away, left you some money. You didn't solicit them necessarily. They wanted to leave some money to your organization. So it's an example of what a unsolicited gift could include. But copies of fundraising contracts with professional solicitors, fundraising councils, if applicable. Again, if applicable. Maybe no, and if no, you check no on the form, and nothing's asked for you. We don't ask you to attach anything. Same thing with affiliated with state agency. And same thing with registration fees. Fee $50 to $300, but only if the organization receives $25,000 or more, unless, of course, it's under $25,000 and uses a professional solicitor, in which case it'll still owe a $50 fee. And notice that talks about professional solicitor, not professional solicitor and fundraising counsel. So we're asking if you have a contract with a professional solicitor and or fundraising counsel, but the thing that would cause you to have to do a full registration if you're under $25,000 is if you have a professional solicitor. If you have a fundraising counsel and you're under $25,000, you still wouldn't know the fee. So these words, these definitions mean very specific things in the law. So your organization's under $25,000 in contributions. It's going to file with us. What does it need to file with us annually? So annually, it has to file something that we call an exempt organization fundraising notice form. That's going to be its initial filing, IRS tax determination letter, if the organization's a 501c3 or some other type of 501c. And if the organization files a 990 or 990 EZ with the IRS, it'll send a copy to us. But we're not asking for your 990N. The way the form is set up, if you file a 990 or 990 EZ, we ask you to attach it. If you file a 990N or none of the above, then you answer certain questions about total contributions received for that fiscal year that you're reporting. So this is what's required during an initial filing if you're under $25,000. The online form is going to walk you down this path. I talked a little earlier about the way the form is set up online. If you're an organization that files a 990N annually with the IRS and you're going online to file, it's going to ask you, do you file a 990 EZ, 990N, 990 PF, or none of the above? And if you select 990N or none of the above, it's going to prompt you to enter the total contributions for the year you're reporting. And if you enter less than $25,000 and you don't have a professional solicitor, the online form is going to take you right down this path of filing an exempt organization fundraising notice form. So it's going to morph into that rather than a full registration for initial or annual registration. It's going to know, oh, they're under $25,000. They don't have a professional solicitor. They only need to file an exempt organization fundraising notice. And the system will know if you're under $25,000 and it walks you down this path, it's going to know not to charge you a fee. So if you're filling out the exempt organization fundraising notice form online, you're not going to be prompted to pay because it's going to know you're under $25,000. Annually, what are you giving us if you're under $25,000? Basically the same thing. You're going to give us an updated exempt organization fundraising notice form. Hey, we're out here soliciting. We're notifying you that we're fundraising, but we're under $25,000. That's effectively what that does. Here's who we are. Here's how we're doing it, and here's where you can find us. If you file a 990 or 990 EZ, you'll send us that most recent one. If you don't, or you file a 990N instead, it won't be prompted. You won't be prompted to give us that. You'll be prompted to answer the question about contributions received this year and last year. So, and just like the full registrations, these exempt filer forms are due 10.5 months after the end of the organization's fiscal year. So again, due date, not based on when you first filed. Due date is based on when your fiscal year ends. So, got a little too far ahead of myself there. So under 25,000 exempt filer, you don't have to do the full registration, but you still have to give us something. Reasons you can be exempt altogether from giving us something: religious organization. So what's a religious organization? One that is teaching the moral and ethical aspects of a particular faith. So actual teaching of the word of some religion, not just referencing that in your works or using that as the motivation for your work, but actual teaching of religion. Is a religious organization or organization affiliated with a religious organization, an organization that only solicits its membership. So you have membership, and those members get benefits, and they can vote on the board or elect officers, hold office, vote on different issues. So they can do those some of those things, and they have a bona fide right or privilege from being a member, and you only solicit your membership, you would be exempt from registering. If you only received contributions from for-profits and private foundations, you would be exempt from registering. Very rare that we see that one. Parent-teacher organizations, youth sports that receive less than $25,000 a year in charitable contributions. So most organizations, if you're under $25,000, you have to give us that exempt organization fundraising notice form. You have to give us something that tells us you're out there raising money. But if you're a youth sports organization or a PTO type of organization, and you get less than $25,000 a year, you don't actually have to give us anything. There's a lot of organizations that are PTAs that are under $25,000 a year that still file with us voluntarily. They don't necessarily have to, but they do as a matter of complying and filing annually. You get not necessarily a bad strategy. Maybe one year you're over 25,000, at least you won't forget if you're doing it every year, right? So you don't have to, but some of them choose to, and that's fine. Public safety organizations that solicit contributions for public safety purposes. So again, think police organizations and fire departments. They don't have to file with us because it's deemed soliciting a public safety contribution rather than a charitable one under our law. So when I talk about the term charitable contributions, I'm using it specifically as it's defined in the Maryland Solicitations Act, not, don't confuse that with the way you think of it for the purposes of writing off a donation you make to a charity for IRS purposes, right? So charitable contributions as defined under the Maryland Solicitations Act, not as defined in other areas. So that's what we're thinking about. So some common registration mistakes. You know, we still get unsigned 990s. On the online form, it asks you to attach a signed copy of the 990 or the e-file signature page. Folks still forget that a lot. So we're looking to get a signed copy of your 990 or 990 EZ. And if it was e-file with the IRS, you should have something called an e-file signature authorization page. And that is that is what we're looking for if it's an e-file form. Entering the incorrect fiscal year that's being reported. If you're submitting your 2023 990 and 2023 audit, you want to note that it's for the fiscal year that ended in 2023. Folks, a lot of times, we've all probably done it at one point in time or another. You write the wrong year on the date. You see it all the time when the year changes. You forget, oh, it's January 2nd of the new year. I got to write the new year, not the old year. But the other thing that happens with folks, moving through things, and think of it in the way you pay your personal taxes, right? Your 2024 filing is due with us in 2025. Right? Your fiscal year ends, and you file that within 10.5 months. So in 2025, you're probably filing something for your fiscal year that ended in 2024. So folks will commonly write the current year rather than the actual fiscal year end that they're filing for and reporting. So just being aware of that. And then on the online form, the other thing we bump into, two things, I should add another one. But one of them we run into is plugging in the wrong numbers from your 990 or 990 EZ. We're just straight up answering that first question wrong. Folks will oftentimes, that file a 990N will oftentimes check 990 or 990 EZ instead of checking 990N. But by checking the wrong box, it prompts you to answer questions you can't answer because you don't have a 990 or 990 EZ, you have a 990N. The last item that happens here is not plugging in all your full board of directors, your full current board of directors on the online form itself. Those are really the primary reasons that online forms get returned. All easily correctable things, but just plugging in and that attention to detail. What am I filing? Okay, this is what I got to plug in. On paper apps, all the things above and some. You're not filing all the required documentation, not providing an email address or phone number of record, incorrectly calculating your contributions, which leads some folks to overpay or underpay the registration fee. So the online form calculates it for you. As long as you plug in the right data from your 990, you're going to pay the right fee. You don't have to do the math yourself. Math's not for everybody. I know that. I like math, but not everybody likes math. So it's a it's a thing that the form does for you and is pretty straightforward. So the paper form, right? You got to go through the checklist. Folks forget things all the time. If you forget it online, this online system's going to yell at you and tell you to attach it or fill out that answer or whatever. And we don't want you to pay more than you owe. We don't want you to pay less. We just want you to pay whatever it is you owe. And, from there, be done with it, right? We don't want more money than you owe us. The online system's good at that. Many folks pay the right fees online by check too, but the other thing the online system does is correctly calculate that late fee. You don't have to pay more than you think you owe, but you'll pay the right amount if you're late. We talk about being due 10.5 months after the fiscal year ends. You don't actually get a late fee unless you're 60 days late from that. So, if you were due November 15th, your late fee is not going to start till January 15th. A lot of folks will write us and pay a $25 or $50 late fee because they're 3-4 days late or, 30 days late. They don't owe the additional late fee. They're not 60 days late yet. So we don't want you paying late fees if you don't owe them either, right? So, some common registration mistakes here that folks make, so things to be aware of. Recent changes, recent in the relative term, automatic extensions has been a thing for a while now, right? 10.5 months. Used to be that you had to register 6 months after your fiscal year ended, and you could request an extension or a series of extensions to get to 10.5 months past your fiscal year end date. Now we just grant it automatically. We don't make you ask anymore. As long as you're current with your registration, you automatically qualify for that extension. Audit threshold and financial review thresholds went up. It's coming up on about a decade now. So audits are $750, financial review $300,000, and board of directors. You heard me mention earlier that we don't need an alternative home or business address. It's not required. If they can be reached through the organization's address, then you can provide us the organization's address for each board director, not a home or alternative business address. So just in general, we want you to get it right the first time as much as possible and be done with it. And these are the different things you want to be prepared to have when you're filing, whether you're dropping in a paper app or filing online. You want to have all that data here from this town hall ready to go so you can get it done and get it done right the first time. There's a lot of resources out there for nonprofits, and here's a few of them. Mentioning this is not intended to be legal advice. It's for informational purposes. For legal advice or counsel in compliance with these requirements, organizations can contact these following resources that may be able to help you out, or with this or some other stuff regarding a nonprofit activity. So, take a look at these. I'll let it sit here for a minute. The next slide is going to be our contact info, so I'll hang here a minute while I conclude. And so reach out to these folks if you need help or need resources. There's a lot of good information out there for nonprofit organizations, whether you're brand new or been around for a long time, whether you're mighty big or mighty small. There's a lot of good data out there and information resources that you can use to help you, either comply or fulfill your mission or govern your organization, things of that nature. These are all good resources for you. And then just our contact information. When in doubt, reach out. When in doubt, reach out to us. It is a, we're a phone call or an email away. If you call that number and we don't answer and you leave a message, we'll call you back as soon as possible. As soon as possible. Same with the emails, dlcharity_sos@maryland.gov, dlcharity_sos@maryland.gov. And reach out to us by email, right? And again, same thing, we get back to you as quickly as possible. Some points in time of the year are busier than others. I've referenced the folks that have a fiscal year that end in December or a fiscal year that end in June. That's just where my mind goes, because the vast majority of charities have a fiscal year that ends in one of those 2 months. Not all of them, but a good chunk of them. And so if you're reaching out to us right on November 15th, we're probably getting several hundred applications and several hundred phone calls and emails, right? So try to avoid those busy periods if you can. That's why I said if you can file early, file early. Don't wait till the very last second. But even if you do wait till the very last second, remember, you're not getting a late fee unless you're 60 days late, right? So most folks that are calling us then are worried because they're going to, oh my goodness, I'm going to be late. So I don't want to get a late fee. I don't want to get in trouble. Well, you don't get a late fee unless you're 60 days late, right? So you have time. You have, it's there. We're there if you need us. But I always remind folks that the busier the time, and May 15th is the other heavy filing period, especially November, December, early January, late October, and then late April, all of May, all of June, and into July, almost through July. We're running around here getting as many apps done as we can, and we get a lot of inquiries at those times because so many people are filing and so many people want that answer now. And we work through them the best we can, as quick as we can. So if you're reaching out to us then and it's a little slower on the response or on the answer, that's probably why. We're not trying to wait or take long. We just get a lot of inquiries at certain times of the year. So keep that in mind. And like I said, if you can file early and around those busy periods, great, do it. Definitely do it. Just covering a couple questions here in the chat. One question about if we're not based in Maryland but have a donate button on our website that can be easily accessed, do we have to register? The short answer, there's the specific answer to that question, but it's there's a with additional context. The short answer to the question is no. The longer answer is if you're soliciting online, you're not based in Maryland, and a Marylander donates to you, the moment you follow up with them, you're now soliciting that Marylander and you have to register with us. So just having it all, if you're located in Maryland, you got a donate button, you got to file. If you're located out of Maryland, outside of the state of Maryland, and you have a donate button and somebody comes to you and gives online, you don't have to register with us. But the moment you follow up with that person, if they're from Maryland, you would have to register. So if you're following up, you're collecting data and emailing people. I'm on a lot of email lists, right? The moment you interact with anybody these days, you end up on their email list. Whether it's people I pay bills to or credit cards or charitable organizations here through my work email address. I get a lot of emails, and a lot of them on the charity side are sending me to their website or telling me about all the great work they do and asking for donations, and that's a solicitation. So even if I interacted with them, I never even gave before, but I'm still getting a solicitation later. So the short answer to that question was no, but the longer answer to that question is there's more to it, and it's once you follow up, that's when you now have asked somebody for a donation from Maryland, and now you have to register. The question about is this the same one for the Department of Assessments and Taxation? That's the one I touched on earlier. The short answer is no. The long answer is you file with them for one reason, you file with us for another. They are different systems and they are separate and unrelated. So you file with them independent of us, you file with us independent of them. Other questions here in the chat. For organizations filing renewals, how quickly should they expect One Stop to be updated? Grantees are seeing that our status is pending. If you've been pending for a while, Kevin, just reach out to us at DL Charity and check in on the status. and we'll go in there, and if it's just sitting in there waiting review, we'll get it reviewed and answer you. The moment we approve it, though, is the moment the status changes. So within 1 to 2 minutes of us hitting the approve button, your status is updated. You're no longer pending our review online. You're back to current, or not current, or delinquent, or whatever the status is after we review that application. So the status updates instantly upon us approving it or sending it back. But reach out offline to DL_charity_SOS and send us a question, check in the status, give us your organization's name and, federal tax ID number so we can find it easily. And look it up, and if it's awaiting processing, get it processed. Or maybe we processed it and sent it back for corrections and haven't got it back refiled yet. That happens too, right? You get a lot of emails every day. It's easy to miss one too, I would imagine, or maybe it ends up in the spam folder or something like that. So it could be that we did answer and kicked it back for a correction or an update, and we're awaiting a response, but you may not even have realized that if you didn't see that email, or maybe it got blocked or in spam somehow. So could be a few reasons why it's still impending, but reach out and check. Always reach out and check. So in years past, we followed our registration online, but still had to mail in a check. No, that's generally not true. The only reason that might happen is if you only have an American Express credit card, because we can't take American Express payment. But if you're filing online, you're going to pay your fee online, and it's very rare that anything else happens. If you're current and you're filing your annual registration online, it's going to prompt you to pay online, and you're going to pay the fee. Or if you're a little late, it's going to ask you to pay the late fee online, and you're going to pay the fee. We don't want to dance back and forth between the two. One other thought about that too that I'll throw out. A lot of folks, some of the folks that still will send us in paper, like, hey, I sent that to you, and I still got a reminder email that I'm due soon. That means we just haven't processed it yet, right? If we get something in the mail, the online system doesn't know that we got it in the mail. So if you're getting an automated notice from the online system saying that something is due soon and you already sent it in by mail, well, that means we haven't processed it and it's awaiting our review, and the online system doesn't know, right? If we processed it and you got renewed, then the online system wouldn't send you the reminder. So thinking of those things as well when you're thinking out, why did I get something? Why did I not? So Kurt Jenke, email me offline. I'll throw my direct email in the box talking about navigating the system. We'll set up a time to talk. I'll get you through it. Can a signed copy of the IRS Form 990 be electronic signature? Yep, it can be electronically signed. It could be a manual signature. It can be the e-file signature authorization page. A religious organization exempt from solicitation requirements is not required to give us a COF 85 annually. So if you're exempt, a religious organization, and you file a 990 with the IRS, you give us a copy of that 990 annually when you file it to the IRS. If you're an exempt religious organization and you don't have to file a 990 with the IRS, you do not have to give us anything annually. And so filing dates again, 10.5 months after your fiscal year ends. If you're December fiscal year end, November 15th is the due date. If you're a June 30 fiscal year end, May 15th is the due date. You can kind of, move up and back from there as far as what the due dates are. And one of the other PTAs, generally change officers. What would you suggest that the outgoing officer enter the incoming officer's info? Well, I can't tell you how to manage it, but there are ways to do that. I see a lot of PTAs have treasurer at, or president at, or info at. That is a universal email address that the incoming board has access to. So I see a lot of that, and that seems to work pretty well, because when the board changes, the new people still get the emails, right? And if that's the email address of record, then no problem logging into One Stop, right? So as long as that password is shared. and that email is accessible if the password's forgotten. So think about the best way that works for your organization. Can't really tell you what to do per se, but that's one strategy I've seen that worked, especially for the PTA example you gave. The annual registration form doesn't have a particular number. It's a question, what number does it have? It doesn't have a number. And the online, if you do the online form, it's going to just take you right to it. You'll see, you enter the initial information, and what's below it will kind of morph, and it'll say annual updated registration form. So not every one of our forms has a number, just like the exempt organization fundraising notice doesn't have a number. Louis Machioshi also reach out to me offline at my email address. If you can't generate an online form, maybe that somebody else has access to the system or something's wrong in there, but it's fixable. Reach out to me offline. Charitable thrift stores, does the $25,000 sales in the store, or is it only monetary donations? Well, if you're selling it with a charitable appeal, it would include sales. If you're not, then no. But if you're getting donations of gift in kind, that counts towards the threshold as well. Which actually, enough for the next question about gifts in kind. Yep, if in-kind donations count, that stuff has value. If that stuff has value, it counts towards the threshold. And school booster organizations, are they exempt? No, they are not exempt. If you're youth, youth sports under 25,000, parent-teacher organization under 25,000 doesn't have to give us anything. If you're not fitting into one of those, the organization would have to file annually. But again, if it's under 25,000, it doesn't have to give us the full registration and pay a fee. It's a shorter form. A lot of good questions in here. What if I have an extension? 990 is not done yet. Well, our extension matches what the IRS 990 extension is. So using the examples where I gave, if you're a fiscal year end organization, December, your fiscal year ends December, you're on 990s due to the IRS May 15th, your registration's due June 30th, we automatically extend your registration until November 15th. You don't have to ask for an extension. You have to ask the IRS for the extension, right? And what do they extend you to? They also extend you till November 15th. So the extension for your state registration filing is the same extension you can get for your 990. So we're not going to ask you for a 990 that isn't done yet, because if it's not due to the IRS, you're not going to have to give it to us because you automatically qualify for the extension. What if some folks say, well, I didn't file my 990 till November, right on the deadline, November 15th. What if I can't file with you the next day? Great, right? Even though you're late a day, you're not going to get a late fee, because you don't get a late fee unless you're 60 days late. So that still holds. You're not going to get the late fee if you're a day late, and you're not going to have to submit a 990 as part of your annual registration with us if it's not due to the IRS yet. Somebody asked about $25,000 threshold. Is it only for Maryland contributions or all? It is for all contributions, not just Maryland contributions. I could look at that slide. Will the slides be sent to those registered? No, they're embedded in the recording here, so you can access them on the recording. The recording, will you get a copy of it? It'll be posted online at sos.maryland.gov on the charities homepage. I will throw that link into the chat here as well. So the recording, within about a week today, we was kind of talking about that at the very beginning. So if anybody hopped on late, this recording is going to get posted online within about a week of today, and that's where you can re-access the recording and the information and the slides. And I just threw that link at the bottom of the chat. So a few other questions. We're going to do hand raising here. One of the questions in the chat is the $300,000 threshold that triggers a financial review. Is it based on charitable contributions from individuals? If our total budget includes earned income from collecting rent. So rent's not a contribution, right? That's a payment for a service. So again, what is a contribution? What is not a contribution? Total contributions is what we're looking at. So income from donations and fundraising events, not a payment for services rendered, because a payment for services rendered is not a contribution. We want to go all the way back to those slides at the beginning. Payment for property sold or services rendered. Rent is a service rendered, right? You provide them a place to live, they pay you for it, or service, whichever one you get, whatever one you want to call it. So that is and then the other part of that question asks about getting government funds. So like a voucher program, government money doesn't count, no matter how you get it from the government. Grants, reimbursement for services, government money does not count. I went back to that slide here about what is and is not a contribution. Government money in any form does not count as a contribution. So I'll thank you for the shout out to the charity staff about being very helpful. That's awesome. I'll share that with our team. Always good to read that. We try our hardest. We really do. And then, yeah, so I'm going to kind of move to hand holding. Hand raising, I mean, not hand holding. A lot of questions. If you have questions, if I miss stuff in the chat, send an email to us as well. If I don't get you here when I do hand raising, send an email to us, dlcharity_sos@maryland.gov. We try to get them all. We might not get them all, but so just before we go, raise hands and have a conversation here. Just thank you, everybody. If you want to stay on and ask more, go ahead. If not, glad you joined us today, and thanks for joining us. I hope this was helpful. And again, recording will be posted on that link I just threw in the chat box. Usually within a week of today, it's up there. It might be up even sooner. Emails, dlcharity_sos@maryland.gov. We'll get back to you as soon as possible. So if, or you think of a question and you don't want to ask it here, that's fine too. Reach out to us offline. We'll help you out. Call us offline. We'll help you out. And try to get you the information that you're looking for if it's something we can give you. So thanks again. Again, it's intended to be informational purposes only, not legal advice. We'll have more of these. One question, folks, if you're still hanging on, ask me a lot, is the link to today's recording. There'll be a new link for every town hall. So about a week in advance of every town hall, we'll send you a link to join, and it'll be a Google Meet link just like this one. That's the platform that we use here at Maryland SOS. So you'll get a fresh link about a week before the town hall's date. Might be 6 days, might be 7 days, might be 10 days in, but about a week out, you'll get a fresh link to join the next town hall, whatever email addresses we have in this thing. So if you got the email from us, you should get it moving forward. And if you want to add somebody, let us know if you think they want to see it as well. So thanks for joining us today. This will end our recording, but if you want to hang on and ask some other questions here, feel free to do that. Thanks again for joining us today, folks.